It's been 127 videos, and even when you subtract all of the nonsense and meme posts, there's still a lot of stuff left. I've said a few words about Kingdom Hearts, whether in scripted videos or unscripted tier lists and conversations on stream. I started the channel in the aftermath of Kingdom Hearts 3, and while there hasn't exactly been the most stuff going on release-wise since then, especially if you're not musically or mobily inclined, I've probably thought more about this series in the past 4 years than the 17 prior to KH3. That is to say, there are things I've said and videos I've made that I don't necessarily stand by anymore. Framing it that way makes it sound like I have a checkered past of puppy kicking. In actuality, the stakes here amount to thinking one game might be a bit better than a different game. The pesky thing about videos is that they eventually have to be done, and then they sit there in a state of doneness, and someone engaging with them in 2023 or beyond might be under the false impression that they're hearing from the most up-to-date version of me. This site used to have annotations, you know. Today, I'm basically sending you an early Christmas card, letting you know about what my rotting KH brain has been up to for the past 4 years. Like real Christmas cards, you might not care, but I feel some sense of obligation to do it, and maybe you'll look at it on your fridge or device of choice and smile a little, or think to yourself, oh, he's still a thing, and then carry on with your day. The ground rules here are pretty minimal. I'll basically just be talking about things that I've changed my mind about regarding the series, for better or worse, since the channel started in August of 2019. This will cover anything from characters or smaller points to entire games, so it's really just a smorgasbord of evolved opinions. Or devolved, potentially. Maybe you'll agree with my past self more, that's okay. Time is a flat circle.
The first to run out of time is the loser.
No, the only loser here is me. I was a loser for perpetuating the Mickey war criminal narrative. I'm sorry, okay? I've said sorry a bunch, I still get shit for this. I was mistaken, I was wrong, and I've changed my mind. Last year, I made a video that set the record straight on a bunch of KH-related myths and misconceptions, and I also opened that video with a treaty with the mouse. That segment was about presenting the true facts of the matter, and this one is more about presenting a change in attitude. For anyone still catching up or arriving at this video after watching an older one, Mickey did, in fact, not leave Aqua in the realm of darkness for 10 years. I parsed through all of that in said debunking video. But beyond that, I don't think the guy did anything wrong. I think I was just being a dick. He's an easy target, he's a corporate mascot, and he's short. I was a short kid growing up. I got picked on for being short, so I see someone shorter than me, and my first instinct was to continue the cycle of abuse. I mean, how shameful. I've ragged on Mickey before for being a bit overbearing, but not really any more so than how Donald and Goofy are like Sora's concerned co-fathers. I played through GBA Chain of Memories again this past year, and found myself softened on the Mickey and Riku friendship. It came across as really sweet at my advanced age, maybe because everything is cuter as sprites. Plus, he really did die for our sins in the microwave hallway, while I'm up here sitting in my ivory tower making silly little videos. And I'm sorry about the Michael Mouse thing, okay? It just tickles me to call someone their proper name. I will always giggle when I hear Charles Entertainment Cheese. It's lowest common denominator, and it gave me a shred of joy, and I'm sorry if it caused people on the internet to say it more often. I am still going to do it sometimes.
If that's what you think.
Moving on from the Disney mascot, let's shift to the character who embodies the KH original side of things. Of course, I'm talking about the Whirlwind Lancer himself, Xaldin. I think Xaldin is probably a consensus bottom-tier organization member. He has his fans, but if you took the aggregate opinion of the community, I'd be shocked if he cracked out of the bottom 5. It doesn't help that his only content of substance comes from KH2 and Days, and he's lucky to get a single line when he's in Dylan mode. I'm not putting Xaldin at the top of my list now, but I was definitely sleeping on some of his hidden depths when I put him in the E tier while ranking all of the characters in 2019. I think replaying through Days and hearing thoughts from viewers, specifically Romsom, who I cited in the Day ranking video, changed my opinion on Xaldin for the better. At face value, Xaldin is just a guy with mutton chops. At less literal face value, he's a guy with an unhealthy obsession with the beast. And to me, he always felt like someone who occupied the same niche of gruff, serious guy, a space already somewhat occupied by the likes of Lexius, Marluxia, Cyax, and Xemnas. But reading into Xaldin's Days dialogue and Secret Report gives him a good deal more depth if you're willing to connect some dots on your own. Observing his character with the understanding that he views his becoming a nobody as a way to free himself from the shackles of emotion puts his Beast Castle endeavors in a new light. Other nobodies yearn for emotions and wish they could feel feelings. If it weren't for the fact that those without hearts are literally incapable of doing so many things, Xaldin would feel certain that he's traded up, which is kind of unique. He has no desire for happiness, and especially not love, which can really only lead you to ask one question, which is, who hurt you, Dylan? Is he just jealous that an actual monster is able to earn the affections of someone while he himself failed to get Alias to give him the time of day? I'm only slightly joking. At the very least, I now see Xaldin as someone whose attitude is explainable and has a bit more backstory behind it, as opposed to before where he was in a race to the bottom against Lexius, who I have yet to find anything to say about at all. Maybe give it another 4 years.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
I've been too nice so far, so let me channel my inner unversed. And this kinda hurts me because I was so high on this game when it came out, but it's fallen a bit in my estimation, and not really by its own fault. I'm unfortunately talking about Melody of Memory. At the risk of upsetting Xaldin, I think I was just in love with the idea of the game, and to a degree I still am. But then I played Theatrhythm. The phrase of the day here is, comparison is the thief of joy. I have no idea how or if I'd ever go back. The amount of content in Final Bar Line sort of puts Melmem to shame. And it's not that more complex gameplay always necessarily makes a game objectively better, but I definitely have more fun playing any given Theatrhythm song over a Melmem song. Even on the easier difficulties, there's just more to do in a Theatrhythm track, whereas Melmem is pretty much limited to simple hits and those glide segments, at least in the normal format. I always preferred the higher degree of variety in the Melmem boss stages, and surprise surprise, that's closer to how Theatrhythm does things. And normally I try to judge games for what they are and not what they aren't, but considering all of the connective tissue between these two games, it's hard not to compare. I know Final Fantasy has a longer and broader history of music to pull from, but that game has 385 songs, all having 3 difficulties and some with 4. Not even including DLC, which should have been a no-brainer for Melmem and something I gladly would have bought. I remain bewildered that they put 3 Disney Renaissance songs in the game and then elected to deny themselves further money. And I don't want anyone to get it twisted, I still think Melmem is a good game. I love the presentation, the visual and audio feedback, it feels good, and I appreciate all of the collectible cards in the museum. I guess I'm just a bit harsher on it knowing it comes from the same publishers, albeit not developers, who made games with a similar premise and so much more meat to them. Not to mention games that came out both long before Melmem and not long after. Also, I'm sorry, I know Melmem is not a perfect abbreviation, but I am not saying Melody of Memory every time. And I'm certainly not calling it MOM or MOM, that's psychotic. We already used that for this guy and he was here first, so we're not doubling up, I'm dying on the Melmem hill.
Alright. I'll indulge you.
Let's keep complaining, I feel like that was just a warm-up. Like with the characters, I also made an unscripted tier list of all of the games in the series several years ago. In that tier list, I put Dream Drop Distance in C tier and called it Replacement Level Kingdom Hearts. Well, I've been asked since then why I haven't done too much content that focuses on DDD, and I'd say it's because I don't really like making videos that are mostly negative. But I said nice things before this part, and I'll say nice things after, so I feel a bit better talking about it here. Since that tier list, I played a challenge run of Dream Drop on stream, and let me just say now, I never judge a game based on how it plays during a self-imposed challenge. This game was not meant to be played on Critical Level 1 on a fresh file. So I'm never going to call this game or any other game bad because I feel that it's not perfectly balanced in the event that you decide to play it masochistically. By that same token, if you think a game is only good or fun with a self-imposed challenge, that's nice and all, but I would think that the game is somewhat flawed at the end of the day. All this to say, while I don't judge Dream Drop based on my challenge run experience with it, playing the game in that way did reveal a ton of problems the game has, at least in my eyes. Every KH game has its exploits or unintended quirks, but Dream Drop is overflowing with them, and my major takeaway is that the game just isn't as well made or polished as basically everything else in the series. The game is just supremely annoying to me, and that's even outside of anything it does on a storytelling level. And yet, at the same time, for every annoying thing that the game wants you to do, there's some sort of trick or exploit to get around it. I'm not saying these tricks were intentionally programmed in to give the player an out, it's all clearly unintentional stuff that slid under the radar. On one hand, I'm glad all of these things are here, but on the other, it's still also bad that they exist in such abundance. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. For example, in order to unlock some ability gates for your Dream Eaters, you need to link with them a certain amount of times in battle. So the game obviously wants you to link with them in a battle, build their link gauge back up, link with them again, and so on and so forth, gradually making progress towards your goal. Introducing the Riku room changing trick, in which you link with a Dream Eater and immediately leave to a different room, which results in the game counting that as one successful link and leaves you with a full link gauge. Just do this over and over and you can meet the link requirement in literal seconds. So we've invalidated what the game wanted of us there. Well, that's just one instance. I'm not going to dock the game just for one simple trick. Speaking of Dream Eaters though, you love them, don't you? That's good, because you'll need to express that love a lot if you want to increase their affinity and link points and experience. However, just kidding. Buy a water barrel, use the water barrel, immediately exit the water barrel, and get a bunch of points. So the price for these benefits isn't a gradual relationship you build over time with your Dream Eaters, and it's not even the minute it takes to play the water barrel game. The asking price for these Dream Eater benefits is the cost of a water barrel, which is 80 money. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Obviously, most people aren't going to figure these tricks out on their own, they're going to find them online. But they're sure to go looking for some kind of shortcut or alternate way when the intended method is mind-numbing and needlessly prolonged. You expect me to link with this dinosaur how many times to get the ability I want? The game is only so long. I need how many link points to get that command? I don't know how you're organically meant to do some of these things over the course of the game's campaign unless you are stopping down after doing literally any and everything to pet and play with your Dream Eaters. And I guess if you really like doing that, it's gonna be no problem for you. Me, I've always found the whole thing extremely shallow and tedious, so the fact that so much of the game is tied to their well-being is excruciating. I like the idea of it. In many ways it's an evolution of the command leveling system in Birth by Sleep. In practice, it's an extremely lengthy and interruptive process, which is bad, but thankfully can be shortened through exploits, which also bad. At least BBS let me play Fortune Street. All of this is illustrative of the grander problem that Dream Drop has, in my opinion. It's just fundamentally a game that doesn't know what it's doing or what it even wants to do, in my opinion. It's a game that has the most variety and thought put into its level design since KH1, but the same game that gives you a tool that makes it a pointless waste of time and energy to engage with said design. A game that employs the baffling design choice of forcing you to switch characters regardless of what you're in the middle of doing, sometimes erasing progress you were making on a boss fight. Alright, we got a bar down. The furthest I've made it for sure. I mean, it's gonna be slow. I'm gonna drop. Garbage. How? Like, why? Wipe my ass with it. No excuse. Fucking bullshit. Fucking non-consensual dropping. Zero reason. Fucking bad. Why on earth? This fucking garbo? No excuse. Zero fucking reason. Pat Grumpy. Confirmed. Well, that's just injecting some strategy into the game, right? You gotta get things done quickly and manage your time. Except how are you supposed to predict when you're going to be locked into a boss fight on your first playthrough? By the way, the game will also sell you an item that invalidates the drop gauge, purchasable for 40 money. Oh, but you need to fill up one of your command slots to keep that item on hand. There's the catch. Well, no, not really. I mean, it's a bit annoying, but you just have to equip it in your deck, use one, and then unequip it. So, why exactly do we have this feature at all again? It's so prominently highlighted, it's a third of the subtitle, but the game gives you an extremely inexpensive way to bypass it. Meaning, it knows it's annoying and kind of dumb, right? Well, wait, is that the point of the item? Am I supposed to keep it in my deck at all times out of fear that I might be thrust into a boss fight at any moment and then see the timer start ticking down? Well, that's annoying, right? Just having a spot in your command deck always occupied by this one item? No matter which way I look at it, and I've tried to look at it in more positive ways, it just mechanically seems like a lose-lose. At seemingly every turn for every aspect of the game that might require a bit of thought or effort, there is a workaround. For the environment, there's flow motion. For the combat, there's Balloonra. For the drop gauge, there's Drop Me Nots. For linking with your Dream Eaters, there's the Riku trick. For getting points from the Dream Eaters, there's the Water Barrel trick. Hell, in the HD version, even creating a Dream Eater can be cheesed through the recipe exploit. The game wants you to gather synth materials to make new Dream Eaters, which is good. It gives you something to do, you'll probably level up along the way, and it gives you more time to bond with your already existing Dream Eaters. Or, you could just create everything with the Meow recipe because you put your cursor in the right spot and then press the shoulder button to trick the game. So not only did they not fix a ton of these exploits between the 3DS and PS4 releases, they accidentally added a new one. Did anyone test out any of these things? I need to make it clear again that the existence of exploits does not inherently make a game bad. You can cheese a few Hollow Bastion ledges in KH1 with the Dumbo trick. But you can't cheese every Hollow Bastion ledge, and Hollow Bastion ledges are not a core concept of KH1. In KH2, you can keep your drive gauge full by going through the Timeless River door or a save point, but there's not always one around to bail you out. I know it sounds like I hate Dream Drop, but I really don't. It just frustrates and confounds me. It has all of these ideas but collapses under the weight of them, and yet it's still a very cozy game, it's a great game for Riku, and the music is still on par with the rest of the series. And if you really like it, I'm glad, I respect that, and I wish I liked it as much as you do. But I'm making a change to that old tier list. What's one more D, after all?
Whoa there! That is so unfriendly!
And something needs to take Dream Drop's place on that tier list, and that something is Days. Whereas extended exposure to 3D soured me, spending a lot of time with Days over the past 2 years has strengthened my bond with it. There's this idea that the monotony of Days is the point, and while I agree to an extent, I don't know if it was necessarily an intentional feature, and I do think that notion sells the gameplay a bit short. Making that aforementioned Days ranking project forced me to think a lot more about the game, and I came away from that project feeling a lot higher on both the gameplay and the story elements. While it's a bit cumbersome at times, the panel system is unique and really imparts that feeling of preparing your gear for a mission out in the field. Days is such a customizable experience, which really goes such a long way in enhancing the game's replay value, given the additional challenges for all of the missions and the staggering amount of characters you can mess around with. The game also has this unexpectedly varied magic system, which I covered at length in the Evolution of Magic video. Watching the Days movie when it first came out, having not played the actual game since 2009, left me thinking that they stripped out all of the crummy gameplay and just gave us the good stuff. But in retrospect, A, the gameplay was never even that crummy, Pete's stealth segments aside, and B, having that gameplay in between the cutscenes served the story and the emotional impact it has massively. Returning to the game in the 2020s, the story felt so enriched by actually putting in the time and being around these characters for longer than the runtime of the 1.5 movie. I was reminded of why it all seemed to hit so much harder back in 2009, because I was living with Roxas and Axel and Xion. I was punching in and punching out, experiencing the daily grind, and always relieved to meet up after work for ice cream, instead of eating ice cream like several times within an hour. When the movie is someone's first, only, or most recent exposure to the game, it's no wonder it so often gets boiled down to surface-level friendship conversations. Because not only does the movie kind of do that on its own by stripping out a lot of the more humorous or suspenseful parts, but removing the gameplay just completely fucks with the sense of time and the depth of the characters' relationships. When I get to measuring what I like in a game, even if Days isn't quite as fast or pretty as Dream Drop, I certainly feel more moved by Days, and it also doesn't consistently shoot itself in the foot at every chance. I'm not a fan of the Emerald Serenade or the Leech Grave or, once again, the Pete stealth segment, but those are just moments and not like ideas or mechanics that make up the game's very DNA. So it's your lucky day, Days. You're number 6 now. I'll just put Melmem right there.
This is the connection we need.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm slightly higher on Union Cross now as well, through none of its own efforts, especially considering it doesn't even fully exist anymore. Though I guess I'd rather the quote-unquote gameplay go away before the story, which is actually fairly compelling. I care almost nothing at all for the characters, they're mostly interchangeable PNGs to me, but the stakes are often high, at least when dealing with non-Disney stuff, and I find the conventions introduced in Union Cross to be fascinating. There's basically nothing else in the franchise's 21-year-long history that makes for better theory bait than Union Cross. But I'm mainly higher on Union Cross now because there's finally a definitive and fulfilling way to experience it. This character here, some people call him Player, but you should know that his real name is Damien. The meticulously edited and immaculately voiced fan dub directed by Damo279 is the way to get the Union Cross story. You can dislike or feel indifferent about the game all you want, I sympathize with that, but you don't get to play dumb anymore when Missing Link or 4 comes out and they're referencing stuff from Union Cross. If you're reading or participating in online discourse about the series, that means you have the knowledge and ability to get up to date on Union Cross, now in the best conceivable way. I'm not saying it was ever a great game or that it was delivered in an excellent way that made for peak storytelling, but it happened and it's been lovingly turned into something that's easily accessible. The barrier of entry is shattered and you should really go give the dub a watch.
Hey, watch it!
You know what other game I'm higher on? KH1, yeah, go figure. Familiarity has not bred contempt. The more and more I play and write about this game, the more charming I find it. And that's really all, nothing else to report there. I still like it a lot, and I like it more than I did the last time you heard from me.
Predictable response.
Speaking of KH1, I'm higher now on one of its most maligned worlds, and if you watch the Evolution of Magic, you'll know I'm talking about Atlantica. Again, it's not my favorite world now, and probably not even moving above anything in the world rankings for KH1, but I have a newfound appreciation for it. Since I literally just gave my stump speech about it in the last video, I won't repeat myself too much here, but in short, going all in on magic in Atlantica is the key to having a much better time. Just don't show that key to Triton or he'll get all lasery about it. And you know what? KH2 Atlantica isn't that bad either. Okay, it kind of is, but the idea of it isn't that bad. I'm still pretty low on the execution, but I'm higher on the concept now. The original songs are not great, but maybe it's worth having them to get the other two from the movie. And if we're gonna do the movie plot, I'm always a fan of SDG actually getting to participate instead of watching from the sidelines. And it doesn't get much more participatory than Sora getting to share a few verses in Under the Sea. I'd be a hypocrite if I ignored that just because this is a bit mind-numbing to sit through on a gameplay level. But if you're gonna have a franchise that heavily features Disney, you almost have to set aside some space for the musical side of things. It's such a massive component of the success that the 90s movies saw, and the early KH games were riding off the high of that Renaissance boon. Atlantica does feel like the most naturally suited for that role, and they probably didn't want to go through the effort of refining underwater controls and world design because of how panned the KH1 iteration was. Let me be clear, I'm never having fun per se when I arrive here on a KH2 playthrough, but I might catch myself feeling charmed a bit more often now. I respect it more than I like it.
Well, I guess it's never too late to learn, right?
Might as well talk about another princess world that starts with an A that everyone hates. Arendelle has also risen a bit further up in my estimation as well. There will eventually be a KH3 world ranking at some point, I promise, so I won't go too in-depth here. And don't get me wrong, I still have a lot of problems with this mountain, and I don't think it's really spoiling much to say that it's gonna be in the bottom half. But it's not like the worst thing ever. My major gripes include the massive case of doing the movie plot-itis that the world has, and the visual design of the exterior parts of the world. But I have to shout out the hot take tournament from last year and the impassioned defense submitted by the cartoon buffoon. Reading that take and thinking about it a bit made me realize that there were a lot of smaller, more enjoyable parts to Arendelle for me. It's just unfortunate that the bigger issues sort of blinded me to those nicer features. But if any other game did something like the Find Olaf segment, I would find it charming and be excited that I get to explore and interact with the environment. In another game or world, I would like having to weather a storm or air-stepping to stalactites to get around. And in reality, I do like all of this stuff, I was just letting all of the more general qualms I have get in the way of that enjoyment. If the world wasn't so aesthetically samey and forcing you to go from bottom to top of the mountain over and over, I think these segments would all shine a lot brighter.
Wow, I feel so much better.
While we're on KH3 and the hot take tournament, I think now's probably the time to pedal back on the praise I heaped onto Remind. Which I still think is a really solid DLC, but I definitely reviewed it a bit hyperbolically when it came out. Another hot take entry, this one by Fruitoon, moved the needle a bit for me on exactly how much I like it. And mind you, a lot of people treated and still treat Remind as this savior that redeemed KH3 and elevated it from being unplayable or mid to slightly above passable, and I've never been of that mindset. Remind was always just a cherry on top of something I already really enjoyed. And all of the points of praise from me still stand. I love explorable Scala, data greeting is incredibly charming, the data fights and Yozora are all phenomenal, and the Guardians vs Replicas battle is one of my favorite bosses in the game. But I have to agree with what Fruitoon said. Upon further examination, there's such a disconnect between the amount of effort you put into defeating 13 super bosses and the payoff, which narratively amounts to basically nothing. Unlike in 2FM, KH3 made these data fights canon and part of the story, but didn't really justify it in a super meaningful way. And then there's the issue of a good chunk of the DLC being a bunch of graveyard fights we've already done. Granted, you can sometimes play as different characters in them, but never for long enough to really sink your teeth into anything. It's kind of wild that the devs went through the effort of building a Kairi or Roxas only for you to get very little playtime with either of them, not to mention Aqua and Riku from the base game. Again, I'd rather have it all than not, and I suppose it's good to leave us wanting more, but I might have to walk back the best DLC I've ever played comment from that Remind review. I'm comfortable putting that crown back on the head of Fallout New Vegas Dead Money, and no, I am not joking, I fucking love Dead Money so much.
Whoa! Money! Money! Money!
Oh, I should probably bring up a massive oversight from my last video. Retroactively, I'm higher on Magic in KH2, and I didn't really go over everything with a fine-tooth comb like I should have. A big omission from the conversation was the ability to integrate your magic into physical combos, something that is very cool, which I will admit I just completely forgot to talk about. On the other hand, I very rarely feel the need to do so beyond the novel curiosity of it being possible and trying it out once or twice. So yeah, it's there, you can combo and do a spell, but I never really felt like doing so served me in either 2 or 3, whether playing casually or with my own stipulations. But it was also a big miss to just not discuss it, that's on me. I also failed to take into account how the drive gauge factors into the magic calculus, as dealing physical hits helps restore the gauge, and using a drive also serves as a free heal, or free as far as MP is concerned. It was a blunder to use footage of me sporting a full drive gauge while explaining your lack of options when out of MP. I tend to write first and gather clips later, and that was something I forgot to consider. Some people were low-key a bit rude about it, but that's alright, I can be cranky too. But despite the occasional crankiness, you know who I'm higher on? You. Well, not you specifically, but the community. I can't remember which video it was, maybe one of the tier lists, but I know I said something like, what even is the KH community? Reddit and YouTube comments, and I said, who knows, who cares? Well, I knows and I cares. I won't pretend it's perfect, this fandom has all of the usual pitfalls that most internet communities do, but when I said that in 2019 or 20, I just didn't realize how many cool, kind, and extremely talented people were right around the corner. In fact, I literally didn't know anybody. It was November of 2020, at that point I was under like 700 subscribers, and I get a message from Kinode inviting me to be part of a group that was going to organize a sort of virtual con for KH fans, since nothing was going to be happening in person for a while due to, circumstances. From that point on, my world got so much bigger, and I met so many people that I consider close friends, and I've had the pleasure of working with them on a bunch of different projects over these 3 years. That virtual con ended up turning into March Caprice, which has been held every March since. Fans of the series all release stuff they've made all at once, whether it's art, writing, cosplay, music, merch, or video essays about alternate Crocodile timelines. It's been a highlight of my year all 3 times, and there's a 4th one coming soon, which you can sign up for at the website, by the way. The first March Caprice was meant to bring people together over a shared love of something, even though we couldn't all be physically together. There was never a guarantee there'd be a second one, but it ended up being so much fun and meaning so much to everyone involved that the organizers have kept it going. It's always such a blast to see what people come up with each year, and it's a fun blend of people who have been making stuff for years and folks who are brand new. And nowadays there's even more stuff going on, like we had KH20 and Reconnect as in-person cons these past 2 years, and while I wasn't able to attend, getting to see so many of my friends in the community be together and dork out about KH stuff really warmed my heart. I saw 2 of my friends get married at this thing, and it was, pardon my Lumiere, so fucking beautiful. And then there's the content people are putting out year-round. When I was a kid in like 2006 to 2010, I experienced the KH fandom through GameFAQs message boards and 240p YouTube poop videos, which was fine at the time, but there was never any sense of continuity with anybody or a ton of meaningful content to engage with. My kid self would be so jealous of all the stuff there is out there to watch and read nowadays. Just in the past 2 months, you've got the aforementioned Demo Dub, the character psychology series that BioRoxys has been putting out, and the best KH theory video I've ever seen by Sunny Novus. All of which are so high quality and lovingly crafted, and this only scratches the surface of what they and the rest of the community have produced. So I take back that thing I said about the so-called Kingdom Hearts community, because it really is something special, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. Hey, thanks for watching. God, I look really tired. I'm not that tired, but it's unflattering lighting is really what it is. This will be posting on or around Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate. It wasn't intentional when I started out this project, but then it sort of landed there, and I had like the whole very nice speech at the end that hopefully counterbalanced the Dream Drop stuff, so it all tied together pretty nice. As always, if you want to keep up with me, I'm on Twitter, I stream on Twitch, I have a Discord, and if you're interested in supporting the channel, patreon.com/regularpat goes a long way, a couple bucks a month, get some extra videos and benefits, yada yada yada, you know the drill. Like the video if you like Dream Drop more than I do, subscribe if you dislike it more than I do. That's what's called business savvy. Thank you again for watching, stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye.